Advisory Commission. It is November 19th, 2025. My name is Mo McKenna, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the commission. Regular meetings and public hearings of the Clark County Agricultural Advisory Commission are held in a hybrid format with both in-person and virtual participation options for commissioners, staff, and the public. We encourage you to participate in the way that's best for you. For those of you joining remotely via computer, you should be able to see tonight's meeting agenda on your screen. If you can't see the screen and have joined by phone only, I will be announcing the agenda items as we move through the meeting topics. Members of the public and applicants that have joined remotely are attendees. Other event participants cannot hear your audio unless you are acknowledged by the commission chair or staff and are unmuted. This evening agenda is planned as follows. We're going to do a roll call. We're going to do an approval of the agenda, approval of the October 29th meeting notes, general public comment, commission business. We're going to have a discussion about the agricultural land study, Ag Commission survey results and discussion if we have time, go to the order, and then an adjournment. I will say that there's been some feedback that were hard to hear if you're in a hybrid format. I'm doing my best to speak into the mic. I encourage all of you to do the same. And if you can't hear us, please let us know. Let's start with a roll call of commission members who are present. Zora Oppenheimer.
Present.
Amy Treasure.
Present.
Ruud van der Salm.
Present.
Holly Hansen.
Here.
Diane Dempster.
Here.
Mo McKenna is here. Dylan Haggerty.
Here.
Justin Berger.
Present.
Kevin Dobbins.
Here.
Joe Zimmerman. Matthew Cornwell.
Here.
Isaiah Irish.
Isaiah is online. I sent him a meet request. He just showed up.
Great. And Tyler Berenson.
Here.
A quorum is present. I'd like a motion to approve the agenda.
I second the motion.
I first the motion.
Thanks.
Zora.
We'll take it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we've approved the agenda. I will take a motion for approval of the October 29th meeting notes. Please make sure to say your name when you make the motion and for the second so staff can record that for the meeting notes. Can I have a motion to approve the notes?
I move we approve the minutes.
And Holly will second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. We will now take public comment on any items outside of public hearing items. We will begin with attendees in the room. If any, please approach the mic if you'd like to make a comment.
Like that. Hi, I'm David Morgan, Plasnowith Farm. I was watching the last set of when the report came out, and we are one of the people who had to choose forestry versus ag. So the farm is about half and half. And so I wanted to come and check in on that because I think the report, as I saw, undercounted the ag that's in forestry fairly heavily. And I think that's important to note. And the Betty Sue Morris letter in the meeting notes was very helpful.
I do not see anyone else in the room to make a comment. We have a few people online. I have put up the instructions on how to make a comment. If you are online and wish to make a comment, press the raise hand icon as shown on the instructions, and I will see that and I will send you an unmute request. I'm seeing one from Susan Rasmussen, so I will unmute you now, Susan. You can unmute yourself now, Susan.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, we can hear you. Go right ahead.
All right, thank you for putting in all the hours and the time and effort you folks have done. And I appreciate the testimony to be offered tonight. I'm a little concerned. I represent roughly 7,000 rural landowners in North Clark County. And the group is called Clark County Citizens United. And I'm not seeing any of our testimony into the public record for you folks to review. It concerns a lot of facts and figures that shows agricultural trends and conditions, and also the conditions for rural housing that have developed. A prime concern is the metadata that I think Betty Sue's testimony alludes to, and CCCU put it in the public record for the 2015 comprehensive plan update. And we put it in this public record also, but we're not finding it. So I'm putting it in one more time. It's here. I don't know if the camera is on or not for you to see it. But it's the metadata dated 12th of May, 1993 that says the land use polygons created for 1994 GMA depicts land uses within Clark County as determined by the Planning Department. It is a combination of the assessor's land use, primary property type, and the mapping department's photo interpretation. That means that the thousands upon thousands of acres deemed resource were determined by aerial photography and staff's interpretations of those photographs. The soils were not a consideration, especially the NRCS Soils Manual that the Growth Management Act refers to. And we also interviewed the cartographer that did the mapping at that time from the 94 plan, and he directed us to the metadata that proves out that the soils were not a consideration. The soils, the ability to irrigate, the steep slopes have not been a consideration for the resource lands, and that needs to certainly be corrected.
Susan, you have 1 minute.
Okay, my main concern is also that testimony from Clark County Citizens United is not getting to the committee. It's not getting into the public record, and I can't tell you where it has gone. Now, that's a big concern I have.
Susan, is that the close of your comments?
Yes, thank you.
Susan, this is Bart, and we've talked several times. The comments that generally come to the comp plan go into the comp plan record comment summary. The only comments that staff has been posting to this particular meeting link are things that have been addressed directly to the meeting itself. And so I'm happy to take anything you have and post it to this meeting. Please just send me the email, okay?
Okay, I sent you several about, I want to guess 2 hours ago, and I'm quoting the metadata, but I don't know where the other maybe 12, 15 testimony are that Clark County Citizens United has submitted into the record specifically for this committee.
Okay, if it came in within the last 2 hours, I've been getting ready to set up the meeting, but we will find your emails and put it into the record for this meeting. Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you,
There's some
Susan.
that came in over the last week. Okay, thank you, Bart.
Thank you, Susan. And anyone else online that wishes to make a comment, please raise your hand and I will unmute you. I'm seeing Carissa raising your hand. I've sent you an unmute request, Carissa. Go ahead when you're ready. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Carissa Hallstrom. I just have a very short statement. Just wanted to let you all know that at the Ag Study Work Session recently with the Clark County Council, Councilor Young indicated that he wanted to give more weight to certain discretionary criteria in the Ag Land Study that the Ag Advisory Commission was strongly opposed to, as I understand. After having previously stated that he wanted the Ag Commission to be a body whose input was respected and incorporated into the decision-making process. So I just wanted to let you all know that as you deliberate on the Ag Land Study tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Carissa. And what's your last name for the notes?
Hallstrom.
Hallstrom. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And I am not seeing any other raised hands online, Chair.
Thanks, Bart. That concludes the general public comment portion of this meeting. Next up is commission business. So just a quick reminder for everyone, the next meeting is December 17th. It's 1 week earlier than is typically scheduled so that we don't have to meet on Christmas Eve, as much as I know how much you'd like to spend that with me. So just keep that in mind. Secondly, we've already heard from you around issues of code enforcement. That's really important to many members of this commission, and we want to make sure we address those for members of our community. We're going to provide status updates on that topic each month, and there will likely be future presentation. Art, could you add just a little more info on that?
Yeah, I've been speaking internally with our department, and we are looking to that next meeting when this group does some goal setting and looks more in depth at setting up the committees and the work. And so we feel that we can best serve this committee on the topic of code enforcement and possible regulatory changes when we get a little more specific sense about exactly the kind of issues that everyone's having. We know broadly, we've heard in every meeting so far some sort of comment about code enforcement. So we know it's important, but the next meeting will be helpful to do that. I don't know, Jose, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think we're going to have internal discussions with our code enforcement staff. It seems like there are issues with permitting around equestrian and maybe some building issues, the building permit. So we'll check in with Donna and then check back in with you.
What would be most helpful from the commission?
Just the specificity of the issues that.
Do we want to put that on the agenda for December?
That would be my preference. I think
Right.
we'll have time to have a more robust discussion on that.
Let's do it. Anybody else from the commission have any questions or comments on that one? All right. Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
With that on the agenda, will we be able to bring up specific things we're struggling with, things that are working, and talk about them in an actual discussion, or do we just sit and listen to code enforcement talk?
My sense is what Bart and Jose are suggesting is that the first thing is we talk as a commission about specific issues, and then they can go back and kind of present back to us to make sure that they're not giving us a presentation on stuff that's not important. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
So the first step is the commission. Okay. Anybody else? All right, let's talk ag land study yet again. Woohoo, we're back, baby. Okay, so if for those of you who watched the work session or listened to the work session last Wednesday, it's very clear that council is wanting recommendations from this commission about what to do as a result of the ag land study. I know that two of the consultants from Echo Northwest are here to answer questions if we have them. They're online. Barrett wasn't available, but two folks from Echo Northwest are on if we have questions. But my hope is that the commission actually uses this time to have an in-depth discussion since we've had the study. We hopefully listened to the work session. We've had time to digest it so that we can submit our comments to council. We have never done this yet as a commission, so just to clarify what that looks like, in this meeting, we would align on statements, recommendations, comments that we want to make, and then we vote on it. And as long as it gets a simple majority, we're able to submit those to council, okay? We have another opportunity to have this discussion at our December meeting, but these issues are being discussed, talked about in council all the time. So my goal is that if there's things that really need to be communicated coming out of that we're talking about it tonight. So I have a recommendation on how we deal with this because we have an hour and 40 minutes to make it happen. And I'm sure we have a lot to say. I propose that we hear from every member of the commission of what your between 1 and 3 takeaways or recommendations are. Like if you're talking to a counselor, or council member, what would you want them to know or hear or understand from your purview? I'd like to hear from everybody. Let's try to limit comments, discussion. Let's keep it to like clarifying questions. Let's hear from everybody, see where we have a lot of alignment and work on those issues tonight. And then next meeting, work on those issues where maybe there's a little less alignment, or maybe someone's really passionate about it, but it didn't raise to the top for anybody else. Does that make sense? Any comments or questions on that? Okay, yeah, Zora.
This is Zora. Can you just scroll to the overview page? It's like 76, 70 something. Just so it's up on the screen.
Thank you. All right, so I'm happy to have any commission members step up and It is page 76. No, wait, hold on. Oh, maybe 72. Thank you. That's it. Thank you. Okay. So if there's any commission members who are really wanting to jump in with their statements, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, I can go first. Awesome.
Holly Hansen. I have concerns that obviously this commission is made up of people who are pro-farm. And I think we all suspected the result of this study would be like, duh, we have amazing soils and farmland, and we should do whatever we can to preserve it. My fear is that because of this, our opinions may be dismissed as, well, of course, you want to preserve farmland, but you know what I mean? That's being unanimous is great, but not always effective. So I am concerned that the study came out so obviously pro preserving farmland. And from listening to the council, there was already a lot of pushback. And I can just see developers and others just scrambling to scoop up whatever they can before anything happens from this commission. And there will be nothing we can do about it. That's my concern right now.
This is Justin Berger. There's a couple of, well, I mean, sorry, the echo is making it very difficult to think. There's a couple of things I'd like for us to, I mean, to jump right to the chase. I think there's a couple of things that I'd like for us to recommend to the council. The first is that, you know, we've spent hours now talking about this ag study and the accuracy of it. Throughout that entire conversation and concerns about accuracy, I never once heard someone say that we're overcounting agricultural land. The only concerns were undercounting. And I'll say that I am still generally concerned about the period of time that this study was done in. It seemed to be a lot faster than sort of studies that were done in other counties in the state. But that said, the recommendations to me are accurate. The designation should remain. And I think the reason that the ag study was done is you have to have clear sort of objective data that you're using to make a decision as a council. I think that the study itself clearly says that this land should still be designated as ag. I also watched the work session, and I was concerned that, I'll say bluntly, my interpretation was that there's already folks that are trying to find a loophole or wiggle room to ignore the study and move forward anyway. And one thing that, and someone can tell me if I'm inaccurate with this, but my understanding is if we, as an example, look at the land in Richfield that they're looking to de-designate, and one of the arguments was, well, it's become so urban that that should be a criteria. The issue I have with that is if you look at when or how that was de-designated, a loophole was used to de-designate it. And so my concern is that urbanization begets urbanization. And so if that is considered, it will be impossible for us to maintain farmland in this county. It will be a mass suburb, realistically. So with all that said, there's likely some level of flaws or undercounting of the agricultural land in the study. Certainly, if we had someone go to every single parcel of land, it would be more accurate. I don't think that that's realistic. And so with the data we have today and what the comprehensive plan requires, I'd love to see this commission recommend or signal to the county that at a minimum, we support not de-designating any currently designated agricultural land. And we should not consider urbanization as sort of a justification for continued de-designation, because I think that's a trap that we're never gonna win as a community. So that's what I think about it.
Kevin Dobbins. I do have a question. Going off of what Justin said, I absolutely see where you're coming from in that. But are we here to chat about the how, or are we here to chat about the mapping? I mean, they're two different conversations. I don't disagree with what you said at all, but I mean, if we're to that point, I got a lot to say. But if we're here with a highlighter, it's a different conversation.
Kevin, thanks for your question. I think I can start, and then if staff has something to add, please do. The study is done, and they followed a very narrow state requirement of what they needed to look at. I think all of us are like, okay, cool. I wish it had a lot more meat to it in terms of how and had a lot more information, to Justin's point. But I think we've moved beyond discussing the mapping. This is what the study found. They did take into account a lot of the commission's feedback about the mapping. And so now I think is the time to say, so what? What are we going to do with this information? What do we recommend in terms of what policy comes out of this, what land use decisions come out of this, based on the information that we have?
But I guess what my question is more than that is, do we as a group tell the county that, or the commissioners, that we agree with this, or do we as a group tell them that this is just paper? Are we at that point before we move on to then what do we do with this paper? I think we got to either acknowledge that this paper's accurate or inaccurate before we discuss what to do about it.
Diane Dempster. I think that I'm appreciative of the study and the work that they did, especially in the short period of time that they had. And, without doing a windshield survey, it's really hard to know what the landscape of farming looks like in Clark County. I haven't seen that. I think we should endorse this study and ask the council to not de-designate any agricultural land that have. I feel strongly that we need, the land is fragmented from what they've said. The land base is fragmented, and there's been a lot of parcelization that has occurred in the last 20 years, which if there was support of agriculture in that time, then maybe wouldn't have happened. But I think that we need to do what we can to both protect land that's currently designated agriculture and protect land that's useful for farming in the future. So, I think we need to support this study and ask council to support the ag land, because there's so many particulars of why land might get de-designated that we can't address as a council. And I think the councilors need to hear from us that we want to keep ag land.
Diane, I want to ask, is there anything else for you that rose to the top as you read this study? Anything else you want to comment on?
Well, I appreciate the study's focus on the potential for growing food. And as a person who tries to help feed the community and do that by purchasing from local farmers, I think it's really important that we have as much ag land that can do that. I also think that a good reason for keeping land in agriculture zoned that way is so that we can develop an economy. I think we have a pretty poor agricultural economy, and that's because there has been no attention to it that I can see for a very long time. And I think that just as an economic development perspective, that we need to reverse that and at least try to stop the loss of agricultural land, because we can't feed people with parking lots and little warehouses. So.
Who's next?
So the study is what it is. I think we got mostly the things changed that we wanted. A lot of green, and that's good. We're happy about that. We're going to keep losing designated ag land. There's a lot of designated ag land around cities. Cities going to keep growing. We're going to keep losing it slowly, hopefully very slowly, but we keep losing it, and we will keep losing it. And the way designated ag land is scattered throughout the county, the way housing and rural 5 and whatnot are scattered all in between our ag lands, it's really hard to figure out how to get out of this. My thinking is, as a practical path forward, hopefully, the county has to, legislation, whatever it be, we have to have a way that when we lose designated ag land, that we can designate other land that is probably currently being used for ag, because there's a lot of land that's rural or not designated that is also still being farmed, that could be designated as ag land. I mean, if you look at Ridgefield and the center, there is designated ag land all around those communities. They keep growing. Suburbia is a very inefficient way to house people, but that is the way we do things here. So they're going to keep needing lots of acres. Ag land will keep disappearing. Long term, it'd be great if, I don't know if the county can do anything like that, but transferring of water rights, when we lose designated ag land that has water rights, if there's a way to transfer those over. Now, I get in the large scope of things, Department of Ecology is probably looking at water use period, and when water rights go away from ag, they're then used for, housing and everything else. But agriculture is the #1 export in all 3 Western states, West Coast states. We have a strong foundation of ag here and good soils. And sitting on the I-5 and the 84, transportation-wise, we're in a real strong position. But we're just scattered and fragmented. And unless that can be pulled together a little bit, that there's larger regions where ag can thrive and not be under as much pressure from development, or, a McMansion next door that doesn't like cows because they smell but want to live in the country.
Sora Oppenheimer. Thank you, Ruud, for what you said. You took some of the words out of my mouth, but I'm going to say them anyways. So some of the thoughts that I had, that is really distracting, the echo. If I could wave a magic wand, I would make a lot more farmland. And I think everybody here agrees, but I can't. And I feel like we need to be, if we have a really hard line about what we're expecting with this, I think that we're going to get steamrolled. And so I want to encourage us to make our highest, best recommendation and say something to the effect of, if we can't reach for the stars, or maybe just the top of a building, this is an alternative. So how do we balance the need for land for building with the need for farmland? I think that's a really key question. And what are the ways that we can suggest balancing those needs? We need to consider the creep of urbanization. So yes, I completely agree that if the urban growth boundary is creeping and, well, this ag land is right next to an urban area, so we should de-designate it, that will creep. But I would also rather have urban areas stay in urban areas rather than not stay in those urban areas. So I don't know the answer, but there's got to be some way to balance those needs, because farming next to, I think the Costco was brought up in the work session. Farming next to a Costco would not be very fun. But I also see that creep that can happen. So I think one of the recommendations needs to be somehow prioritizing funding or supporting opting into ag designation or some other mechanism to incentivize maintaining or transitioning into ag. And I feel like everybody here is going to cover the let's keep ag and don't lose a single acre, but I want to make sure we don't lose that piece.
Amy Treasure, and my takeaway is kind of like what everybody else was saying, what Justin was saying about soil quality and the loopholes. Like what makes it the soil quality great? Like, what if someone has this land, they're sitting on it, and they just destroy the quality of the soil because they know in the future it's not good for farming, so then they can use it for housing. And there's like just all these small loopholes that I think we need to figure out how, I don't know how, but we need to figure out how to close. It's kind of like my big takeaway.
Thanks, Amy. Who else?
Matthew Cornwell, and yes, the echo. Golly, I'd say I spend most nights chewing on this. I keep telling people it's like the Sudoku puzzles where it's like the expert level where you have to write the small numbers before you can do the big numbers, and then you like cross out all the options. And I agree with what Rude was saying, where like growth is inevitable, and my assumption, it may not be right, but I think a lot of the farmland is already owned by development. And so they got more money than we do, is what like my gut says. And I sat with farmers this week, and it's not like we're crushing it economically. And so there's tension in saving ag land when I also wrestle with who's going to farm it, if I'm being honest. Like, well, who's the next generation of farmer? Why would you ever go into that industry just because it hasn't been supported? And yeah, it looks very different than it used to. I've talked to developers, and they'll talk about how dairies moved out of the state, and they do better in Goldendale than they do in Clark County because of amount of land they can have, the cost of land, and all of those are good arguments. I think ultimately ag is going to look different if it exists in the county in the future. Also work for the food bank. I know the food security was asked of the consultants, and they definitely dodged it, and also wasn't part of the parameters nor what they should be looking at. So I feel like I had to chew on what my stance is with that. I think in reality, if you do the math, if we turned every usable prime or state important piece of land into food production based on just water rights and amount of size and amount of population, we wouldn't be a self-sufficient county. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try to be more sufficient for ourselves, but I think there has to be a sobering reality that I think things like COVID, things like political environment have made us look a lot smaller and prep our own forms of security. And I don't think it is a county solution. Maybe a state solution, maybe a Washington, Oregon, Idaho. I don't know what level of government wants to say we are a capable provider for our needs entity, but the worst thing we have is we are a growing county because we have awesome things and reasons to want to be here. And every time we grow, we're growing on amazing dirt. And that just sucks. And that's going to be in tension. That's just the reality of that, like Rude said. I have ideas. I have suggestions. I don't know if now is the time. Okay, now's the time. Yeah, I mean, I'm outside the box thinker. I don't represent necessarily farmer or development. I'm sitting here kind of in between. So I don't think I have a ton of biases. I think my biggest concern with losing Clark County Ag would be I don't think you can produce the freshness and quality of produce that is shipped from somewhere else, harvested early, going through a grocery store, sitting in a cooler, doing all these things. And I think we have a very unhealthy population. And I think that physical unhealth is more than culminated into mental health. And I sat in the hour and 15-minute meeting of county budget proposal, and a lot of money goes to downstream bandages and solutions for what is a struggling population. And that is just the reality of where we're at. There's nobody to blame because I don't think any of us were the ones who pulled the levers to make that happen. But that's just the reality. And I think even more so, there's the food aspect that would do a lot for someone if they learned how to eat nutritious and engage with food in a different way. But I think there's also even greater, and I think if I was a developer, this might actually strike a chord. There's the lessons that you learn from the land. And I know people who are now in development that grew up, parents were farmers, they made their kid raise animal in 4-H, do all the lessons of getting poop on the hands and having a tough day in the rain. And they're very proud of who their kid is, and they see their kid as a model citizen. And I think if we lose that opportunity and that environment to engage as a community and engage the youth, this is going to sound grim, but it's kind of game over, in my opinion. I think the course that we're on is going to continue as we expect it to. I don't think if we don't have an upstream solution, then there's no changing this downstream responsibility. And yeah, I think in a world where what we see online is now not trustable, is just fascinating and unbelievable. And so where else are you going to feel a sense of connected truth to something that is believable, real, responsive, consistent, and allows you to be a neighbor to somebody that you otherwise wouldn't be? I just can't think of something better than ag and to do that. And that would be a massive undertaking. I'm all for being in the middle of it. Again, I have legitimate ideas of what that would look like, but that might be getting a little too big I'll pause there if that's a good time.
Thanks, Matthew. I recognize we have a couple commission members online, Tyler or Isaiah.
Hi, sorry, I was trying Tyler here. I was trying to figure out my hand waving thing, but it wasn't working for me. So I just wanted to say, I look at this and all the studies and all the maps that we've done or have had done, and I think the biggest takeaway I have is it outlines that right now our current urban growth boundary is basically has a belt line of ag surrounding it, whether it's designated or not. And to me, that's showing that the crawl of the urban growth boundary is just forcing people who want to live rurally, who want to be farmers or have a little animals or some land, to move farther and farther out, which we all know. And that's good and bad. The small parcels, a lot of those are R5s. That can be put to better use by smaller producers, more diversified producers. I really think that needs to be protected, because I was down in Oregon the other day, and as a young man, we did a lot of work down in the Clackamas, Oregon City area, working with various farmers and things down there. And I remember when there were a lot of small truck farms, chop suey farms down there. And if you go down there now, it's all industry and housing. It's completely covered up. And that's what we're looking at. The small acre farms might end up being a draw to the county if we have some markets developed for the fresh produce and things like that. That could end up being a positive if we saved some of those smaller acre farms. But I guess the short end of this is, I think we need to take a little bit more time to discuss this before we come up as a council, come up with a endorsement for this. And I just wanted to float the idea of possibly I know it had been discussed, we could do a workshop of sorts that's not a formal meeting or something. So I didn't know if that was possible. But it's definitely something to think about.
Thanks, Tyler. Isaiah, are you online?
I am, and it is 3 a.m. in Rome, so I'll keep my comments brief. I just wanted to echo some of the other comments, just the importance of preserving the limited amount of agricultural land that does currently exist, but also just having some plans to increase agricultural in the future, just knowing what we're up against and just having some plans and not just our most optimistic goal.
Thanks, Isaiah. We really appreciate you being here. Ciao. Mr. Haggerty, you got anything to add?
Dylan Haggerty, I'm one of those small acreage farmers ultimately, and I think that there is value and importance in that in the grand scheme of the whole county. And I think that everyone is aware that urban growth is a thing. And I don't know any workarounds into that, but I know that there are many areas in the country that utilize designated ag zones. That would just always be an ag, allowing for urban growth in certain areas. And I don't know if we'll end up coming to what is less prime and more prime and determining how some of those layouts go. I'm still trying to take in a bunch of information on it and think critically about everyone to some degree. And I think that's the challenge with a lot of this kind of surface level information that they're providing. So definitely additional information. The breadth of that is huge, but that does allow for much more direct conversations and how to move a lot of those into corrective measures and lines that can be drawn. That's about all I'm inclined to say at the moment.
Justin, you want to add anything? O'Day, we have two Justins.
I think the only thing I'd add is I liked in the end that there was some other counties that were that they were talking about, and I just generally want to encourage that kind of perspective taking, that development doesn't have to look this certain way. Agriculture doesn't have to look a certain way. Really, you can think outside the box, what different countries have done, what different states have done, what different counties have done.
And also just that there's lots of opportunity for what ag can look like in different ways that the county can support it and support its growth. And yeah, I think that's the main thing that I wanted to add.
I think I'm going to round things out unless there's anybody else who wants to add anything.
Diane Dempster, I would like to just, I think my understanding of what we're being asked to do is recommend to the council what we think should happen and not worry so, I mean, I think it's up to the Planning Commission and the council to think about the planning for the whole council. My opinion is that growth should stay within the urban growth boundaries and that most of them can accommodate that, and that, you know, this is part of the Growth Management Act. And so this study was done to sort of see what should happen with the agricultural land. And that's what we're tasked with. So while we might, you know, we're not in charge of everything and growth will definitely occur, I just want us to not base our recommendation on the fear of growth or the idea that it's inevitable, because it's up to the council to sort of figure out how to manage this. And so I think it's just up to us to say what we want to have happen. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but.
Thanks, Diane.
I definitely agree with that. In the short term, I think the one thing I'm chewing on is it does feel like there's an opportunity for us to learn how to work together, as crazy that sounds, to model what effective growth looks like, because I think we're just pushing off the inevitable of growth will continue to happen. We will eventually be like, oh no, this is not of space. And if we don't model what that could look like, then we just end up in the same spot further down the road, and there may not be a passionate group of 10 to 12 people that want to think through this as a forward-looking, using each other's assets to support and develop something that is actually meaningfully moving the needle, other than keeping dirt neither farmed nor built on, because that's kind of what's going to happen, is they're just going to keep sitting.
Holly Hansen. I just wanted to add that, following some of the recent comments, is that there are smart ways to consider development at the same time considering agriculture. There's agri-hoods happening all over the world. We could definitely get smarter about the types of development that we have going on.
Great. I'll add my couple of thoughts and then we're going to move on to some more discussion. Okay. One, you know, the takeaways here are that we have some of the best, highest quality soils literally in the world, right? 98% of the land base, 96% in ag designations are classified as prime farmland or farmland of statewide importance. I think that's awesome. And that's a huge opportunity for us. And as much as previous designations might have been on aerial photography, I'm not sure. The reality is that when you look at the soils, they're really, really good, which as producers and folks who live here, we know that. And so I would recommend that we shared with the council that we not de-designate any of the current ag land. I think it really holds of why it was designated. And overall, I'm concerned that through this process of continued de-designation that's happened with the comp plan, that ag designation doesn't mean anything. And when the ag designation doesn't mean anything, we end up with all sorts of speculation that results in ag land being really expensive and underutilized, right? Like that is a direct result. And so I just feel like, at what point do we draw the line and say, sorry, y'all, this is ag land and it meets the criteria. You shouldn't have put a Costco there. Right? At the same time, I recognize everything that you and all are discussing. I do live on planet Earth, and I think there has to be a way to swap land, right? Like, I really worry about de-designating if there's no process for designating. So what is that process for designating? Because right now, all we're doing is losing. Our population is growing. We have more citizens to feed. It can't only move in one direction. So I think that this commission has a really important role to play in coming up with what lands should be designated and how would we work on a swap of land so that someone doesn't have to farm next to the Costco and instead they're farming next to another farm, whether that's an agricultural district or keeping parcel sizes together. But I really worry about any de-designation until there's a process of designation in place. Potential criteria for that, I think there was lots of good ways that from this report that we could look at approaching that as a commission. So I'm certain there's landowners out there that would want to be in an ag designation. There's people with water rights. I think Kevin made a great point at that a couple meetings ago, like we should protect that land at all costs. And then there's tons of people that are using the current use program indicating that they're farming, right? So maybe those folks want to be in an ag designation as well. At minimum, I'd like to see us back at 1994 levels. I think that's fair, right? We've lost a lot of land since 1994 and our population only keeps growing. I think by also creating this process where we don't de-designate without designation, it's going to reduce the amount of speculation that we have. That would be my hope. I'm concerned about what this report does to the lands that are really high quality and are not designated ag. And I worry that in the time that it takes for us to figure out this process, that land gets gobbled up and developed. So I don't know if we have some sort of a moratorium on upzoning while we as a commission figure out what our plan is and what we would recommend. So a 2-year moratorium until we come up with a plan, 5-year, Ollie says. And then I think the final thing I have from this conversation and overall, like this group is, man, you guys are like doom and gloom about the development coming. I was like, oh no, everyone's like, maybe it's just November and we're tired. But like, I'm a really good steward of my farm, right? I want it to be productive. I want it like every square inch I want to be a good steward of. And I expect that the development community, when they have a buildable land or they have land for jobs, that they are incredible stewards of that piece of land. And I do not see that happening. And I think that's a place where we also, as an ag commission, can say, yeah, I don't know that you need more land. I think you need to be better stewards of the land that's there. Just like we have to be really good stewards of that ag land to make it productive and to feed our community. What do you guys want to talk about next? There was some stuff that overlapped. There was quite a few items. Anybody got ideas about like things we want to talk more about, like lots of people mentioned, that could go to council?
In regards to things that go to council, to de-designate, what are the possibilities of transfer of development rights? So take, for instance, Mo's farm is available to be broke into 5,000 square foot lots, and she doesn't want it to be, doesn't want that hassle. Is she able to sell her development rights to somebody that owns a piece of ground or wants to buy a piece of ground that's in in the UGB or in subdivision zoning, or wants to be, excuse me. So Mo wants out, other person wants in. Are they able to transfer the rights to that? And, without stealing somebody's assets, by saying you now can't do this. Yesterday you could, but today you can't. I think there needs to be a mechanism for that. It's something that's been kicked around but never really brought up. I know there's, I can't speak for anybody else, but there has to be somebody that wants to stay in that. Actually, I'll use you, Sue. If you choose that you never want that for your property and you were to be zoned for development, are you able to, or could you be able to sell your development rights to somebody else that wants to develop? Is there a way to put that tool together, market it, be able to exchange it, let you live the life you want to live, let somebody else live the life they want to live without infringing on what they can do with their own property? So.
Ruud Vandersholm, ag designation. What benefit do we have? Let's say you've got an R10 lot in current use, you're farming it. Is there a difference between an ag 10 lot that you're farming that's in current use? One is designated ag, the other you're farming on. Does designating farmland as designated ag land protect it more? Because it seems like if it's next to a city and the urban growth boundary expands, then it doesn't matter if it's designated ag or rural or whatnot. And as far as us farmers, if the soil is good, does it matter if it's R5 or ag 20?
But Ruud, I think it's supposed to. It's supposed to protect it more. That's the spirit and why we have to go through this big exercise, right? Is it actually doing that? Not if we keep de-designating. Does anyone want to be brave and summarize a statement or piece together some things that people shared and start to move towards something that we're crafting for council? Do we have any brave people here?
I'm not brave. I'm going to say something.
Come on, Matthew.
Not yet.
Well, I'll go for it. As Justin Berger. So I totally understand. Again, I also live on Earth. Like, I understand that the reality is development will continue. My sort of absolute position around no de-designation as part of this comprehensive review is because we don't have the ability to do transfer of development rights. If there was a process in place that allowed us to, understand that someone doesn't want to farm next to the Costco, but in de-designating that, we're protecting somewhere else that will be viable, I'm on board. I mean, that sounds great. I think that sounds realistic. I actually think that the developers may like that too, because it offers a path of less resistance to get something de-designated when it makes sense. So I would hope or recommend that as a council, we send a message to the county that until a transfer of development rights policy is in place, that we do not de-designate any additional agricultural land in the county.
Let me ask a clarifying question, Justin. Does it have to be transfer of development rights or any mechanism that would do a one-to-one trade with designation? So if there's other mechanisms out there that we find that would be also you're open to?
Absolutely. I'm using that term, like broadly speaking, that we're not lowering the number of acres of agricultural land in the county. And when something is de-designated, something else is redesignated in its place. What the mechanism, I'm sure there's a lot of complexities there that is out of my wheelhouse for sure.
So I don't have Zora Oppenheimer. I don't have like recent information on this, but when I've heard of transfer of development rights in the past for Clark County, because our land values are so high, I thought it wasn't super feasible here. And I could be wrong. I would love to be wrong, but I wonder, does anybody else have information on that? Like the land value itself is so high that if you then have to also buy development rights to develop the land, then it doesn't pencil out. That's a question, not a statement.
Well, I would answer that by saying that there are transfer development programs in Puget Sound, King County, and their cost of land is equal, if not exceeding ours. So that hasn't really been the issue.
What has been the issue then?
We haven't gotten terribly far. One of the things that a standard transfer development right program has is you're transferring density. You're increasing density somewhere else. You look around the county outside of the city of Vancouver, who wants it? And so there are programs that King County is using that are looking at what might be other things that would be incentives to developers that they might want to pay for and make that trade. But we haven't had that that deeper conversation. And so that's what sort of needs to happen. You either need to find some area that will take that increased density or have some other metric that it has some value.
Just to add to that or add color to that, I guess Clark County has the second highest population density of any county in the state, which is really high. Like when you consider that we feel kind of small and kind of, we're rural, we got lots of rural land, but we are packed in here like sardines. There's not a lot of places to go.
When you're talking about that, you're talking about population per square mile. Okay. So that's a whole different context than dwelling units per acre. And dwelling units per acre, how densely we're building our environment. That's more of a function of a smaller county footprint and the amount of people, but yeah.
For dwelling units per acre, are we more or less dense?
That's a good question. I don't think we're as dense. In the last 5 years with the development downtown in Vancouver, we've gotten a lot more dense overall, but not as dense as some other, I think, jurisdictions when you're looking at development in Puget Sound.
All right, so I'm going to go back to what Justin shared. He said no de-designation until we have a process for designation. And overall, he doesn't want to see a decrease of agricultural acres. I'm just checking in. How folks feeling about that? Aligned, not aligned?
This is Tyler again. I'll wave my hand, even though you can't see me. I'm with Justin a lot in the no designation or no de-designation category. What I'd like to know is, in 1994, we had 37,800 acres designated ag land. What our population was in 1994 to now, we're probably double in the county at least. And at what point, what acreage do we need to supplement the county's food supply? Do we have a minimum number of acres of ag land that we need, be that for cattle, for vegetables, for grains, whatever? I think we really need to hold off on the de-designations until we can figure out either a process for the transference of development rights, perhaps give the idea for ag conservation easements to take hold a little bit better, some other mechanisms that can make this a little less painful for our growth. And I think in the end, we may get a better result if we just take a little more time to come up with a hard plan.
Thanks, Tyler. Any other comments on that?
Mo, I have one more question, and it's when we talk about de-designation of ag ground, and I don't know if this particular chunk of ground's in the county or the city, but I've seen DNR, Fish and Wildlife, the state, whatever entity buying up ag ground and then just letting it go feral. What mechanism is that for? Or, just as I can't buy a 100-acre piece of ag ground and then just at will put houses on it, how can Fish and Wildlife buy a 100-acre chunk of farm ground with your tax dollars and then just walk away from it and turn it into a mess? I know that that's a lot more palatable for people than houses, but they're just as guilty of it. I think we need to include that in our decision or our discussion. There was a big chunk of Lagglers that went that way, or not Lagglers, but Anderson. It's good farm ground, irrigation. Everybody had all the correct attributes, and Fish and Wildlife bought it, and now you can't trespass on it.
I'm hearing a lot about needing more time. Agree. Right. I think this is something that we're going to want to be working on for a long time to come, right? Figuring this out. What have other counties done? What is going to work here? Do we want to make some sort of a statement about that? Seems to be a trend. That we're excited as a commission to work on it in partnership with staff. Yeah.
Do we have more time? Is there a deadline that we need to? It seems like things are moving fast because there's a deadline that we're approaching.
I think there's a deadline that we're approaching for comprehensive planning, but I think sometimes we don't always hit deadlines. I don't think we're going to come up with a mechanism for designation before the comp plan is done. I don't think that's realistic. But I think it's realistic to say something like, we don't want to have any lands de-designated until there's a mechanism, or we don't want to have the land that was showed up in the report as being really good land, maybe we don't want that to be developed until there's a plan, right? Or land that has water rights or land in the current use. We could, right? That is a way to buy ourselves some time to potentially work on these issues. That's what I see. But I'm curious about what others think about asking for more time or just even sharing that we want to work on this.
I think it's, Diane Dempster, I think it's perfectly reasonable for us to say, you know, sort of give the starting point from what Justin said is that we want to no de-designation of agricultural land until other mechanisms for can be worked out. And other counties have done a lot of work on this in the past over the last 20, 30 years. And, you know, Jose mentioned oh, battery did. I think there's a lot of examples of what different mechanisms, and I feel like as a commission, we will be working on this, and that's our goal. So, but now we could say, here's what we, yeah. Now we can say, here's what we want to start with, and this is, you know, this is our recommendation related to the ag study. And I think that it would be important for us to come up with one. My understanding is that there's a deadline of November 30th, and that it would be really helpful if we could give the council a recommendation. And so I would support what Justin said and know that we're going to be working on all of the issues related to agriculture as we move forward.
Ruud van der Zalm, since time is of the essence, it's getting late. I think our recommendation of saying we, as a commission, council, what are we? Commission, we would not like to see ag land added on to urban growth areas or de-designated until there's a way to designate more ag land. I mean, that, I think we're all in agreement on that one. The only other thing I would add is a little bit to like what Kevin's saying. There's other ag land, probably designated ag land, rural land that's in current use that isn't really being farmed. So you question the current use system a little bit that way. So would there be something that could be done to give the current use plan more teeth or more benefit to force more of the current use, the land that's in the current use program, to be actually farmed? And if it's not actually being farmed, you know, well, obviously you can't tax it more than you're allowed to, but anyway, to kind of use soft power that way to make sure that farmable land that's in current use is actually being farmed and not just being used to pay only 10% property tax.
All right, well, Ruth said we feel like we're mostly in agreement about no de-designation until we have a process for designation. Are we ready to say, yes, this is something that we want to communicate and vote on it? Somebody want to make a motion of that?
This is Justin Berger. I'll make a motion that the commission recommends to the council no de-designation of existing agricultural land until, I don't know what the wording would be, until there's a method to transfer agricultural land. I don't know what the exact wording should be there.
Maybe designate, I don't know, Oliver, Jose, designate.
Okay. Yeah, so a motion that the commission recommends to the council no de-designation of current agricultural land until there is a process for designation of agricultural land.
Holly Hansen, I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, motion passes. Thanks, y'all. All right, we got one statement. We got 35 minutes. Anybody want to be brave and make another statement?
Like the one thing I'm chewing on with that is like, I feel like that claim is going to come to the surprise of nobody, like we said at the beginning. So I still feel like we're at square one in the grand scheme of things. So we made the claim that was expected to be made.
Take us to square two.
I don't know if my brain's ready for that. And I'm just naming this, I think it has little to do with the ag study, but I do feel the tension of like council represents the county as a whole, and we represent a pie of interests. You know, we're the ag community and we have our ag interests, and they represent all communities with all interests. I don't know if they have, if they're allowed to, if there's words, if there's insights, if there's anything, when we get feedback, how we have relational touch points of what is, I don't know, where their pulse is at in all of this, because they know the county as a whole more than we do. We know ag. So yeah, two things there. We're at square one. Everyone knew we'd be here. There's going to be people who are like, they did the thing we knew they were going to do, boo, ag. And I think it's now on us to actually give something with like hope and tangible steps, but I don't know how to get there.
Holly Hansen, I'd like to go back to something Diane Dempster said originally in focusing on the economic aspect of farming. I know it's been a while, but CREDAC has a list of industries that they consider important to this region, and I think we should make sure agriculture is there if it isn't already, and certainly focus on it more as an economic sector.
Do you want to make a statement about it? We believe that the agricultural sector can be an economic engine in Clark County. You got anything? What do you want to say, Diane?
Well, I think it is an economic driver and it could be enhanced. I think that, I think it was Ruth that said, you know, we're in a port, we're on a main transportation, we have great farming in the community, we have great land, and we need investment of all kinds to enhance that. And to me, that would start with a study of what's being farmed and what the needs of the farming community are. But I want to go back for a second to our vote and sort of what happens next. It seems that we could look at what other counties have done and make some recommendations to the council for what how to do, how to blend development with agriculture and what that looks like, because it's done well in many areas and it's done really poorly in other areas. And I think, you know, we've seen I really like what Matthew has said. You know, we see what poorly looks like, and it means that farmers, some farmers wait for their land to go up in price because they can't afford to retire if they don't sell their land for development. And, you know, that even started years ago in the area just east of the Portland Airport and part of why the Oregon land use laws were passed. So this is not a new problem for anywhere, but there are some good solutions that I think we could look into and maybe help make some recommendations.
So do we want to say that the commission is going to prioritize working on the designation challenge? Are we going to prioritize it? That's what I'm hearing from folks, right? That we're going to look at what other counties have done, research it, work diligently to make recommendations about a solution.
I move that. Zora Oppenheimer.
Matthew Cornwell, second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. So we're going to work on that problem, y'all. All right. It's our problem now. I like it. Going back to the comment about agriculture as an economic driver, do we want to get a statement about that?
Can I make a comment on that, Zora Oppenheimer? When we talk about the economic benefits of ag, I feel like it's very much what products are selling or what labor is, paid to local workers. And if you ask, this is, me just making this up, but I think it's probably pretty accurate. If you ask most people why they moved to Clark County, it's because it's beautiful and green and rural and, you can drive for 10 minutes and be in farmland. You can drive for 5 minutes and be in farmland. And the reason that all of those houses that are being built are selling is because of that. And I don't know how to quantify that as, the economic value of ag, but just being open space, not the county definition of open space, but open space and beautiful is so important for the economic part of Clark.
Going off of what Zora was saying, this is Justin O'Day. I was also going to mention too, just in addition to what you said, closer. Okay. In addition to what you said, also just that it seems like as far as the economics go, often it gets overlooked that ag is a long-term thing. It's like a perpetual thing. Year after year after year, it's going to keep producing. And it's very different than a boom economy. And I think a lot of times people look at those boom economy numbers and that is what ends up making the decision. And I was thinking about what Matthew said and like yes, we're like the ag group. We're sort of representing ag interests. But I also think of us as like food security. I also think of us as like long-term planning with regard to food security and safeguarding like the opportunity we have here for land-based economies.
I'm trying to stitch this together in my brain. But something about this ag land that we're protecting provides important economic,
long-term
security, food security. I liked safeguarding opportunity for a land-based economy. And then there's something about attraction and livability.
Mm-hmm.
The non-quantifiable aspects of
Yeah.
of ag, the draw to the county. Yeah.
Anybody else got anything to add there?
Selling a house one time, you're going to make a huge amount, but spread that out over, 50 years for the same plot of farmland, I don't know what the numbers are, but I think the people who drive by that would think that it's more valuable for the aesthetics and whatever food it produces and whatever people it employs. I don't know how you write that in a bullet point. Sorry.
Ruud Vandersam, I think we're getting into squishy territory here. Because I mean, like, we talk up ag ground all we want, but then somebody next door says, like, I've got a 10-acre industrial facility and my dollars per square foot are much higher than your ag. So I don't quite understand where we're going with this. I mean, we're all pro ag, and we know what ag brings to the community, but so does the council, because they formed us as a commission. That's why we're here. So I think we're kind of drifting off a little bit. I mean, not that I don't support what we're saying. I mean, I think we're all in agreement that we value ag, and to your point, you sell a house once, that's it, you're done. And ag land keeps producing year after year after year, but so does commercial and so does industrial. So it's like, let's not have them look that way.
Kevin Dobbins, you talk about economic drivers. Right now in the county, there's one fruit packer left. 20 years ago, there was half a dozen. I mean, don't quote me on that, but there was 3 of them or 2 of them in Ridgefield, so on and so forth. Stan Firestone's the only one left. There's nowhere to haul grain to. It's really difficult to get anything onto rail. And, if accommodating agriculture is something that's valued, the markets for those need to be valued. I think, and maybe Tyler could speak on this, I think the brewer that used to take barley, they're out now. That would be the last place to sell any kind of grain commodity. The second to that's downtown Portland. You got to get in line at midnight to hopefully dump at noon, 1 load. Meanwhile, combine makes 4 or 5 a day. There's nowhere to support ag, you got to be able to sell the product, and to grow it, especially as efficiencies increase. If Clark County got behind supporting the processing end of ag, that'd be phenomenal.
This is Tyler Branson. I'd like to speak quick too. Part of like what Kevin touched on there, yes, we do have in the grain commodities side of farming, we have a huge shortage of markets in our area. And it's unfortunately not because the product does not move through our region. Within 15 miles, we have 5 of the main, 6 of the main export terminals for the West Coast. Millions of bushels of corn and soybeans and wheat, barley, oats move through there. The logistics just aren't there to handle local crops. They want it all to come in on rail. And Clark County actually sits in a unique position with the county-owned rail line where there could be a reload terminal developed, partnered with a different agronomy company or grain marketing, merchandising outfit to make that viable. And that also wouldn't just aid our county, that would benefit Cowlitz County, Lewis County, Thurston County, counties in Oregon. That would also draw commerce to our area. So I think it is an effort to bring, the county needs to support it on that end. That would be a major driver. The acreage required to raise those type of crops is tough to come by in our county. But I know enough people who would like to, are thinking about investing in a small combine to do 10 acres of barley or 20 acres of oats or things like that, more or less for their own purposes, and then sell the excess. So I think the desire is there. We just need to help foster it.
Can one of our recommendations be to support ag financially somehow? Not, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Ms. Holly, I think the word infrastructure, we need to come up with support and development of infrastructure for ag.
I'm wondering if this statement could be a bit more generic in the sense that, like, if you look at the different size of producers we have at the table here, I wonder if it's more generally like coming up with recommendations around how to make agricultural or ag more economically viable in this county. Because I think you're going to get a big list depending on where you are on that spectrum of size and what you're farming too. And I'm wondering if in having that discussion at some point, we find some pretty broad consensus around items that are impacting the economic viability of all of our farms, regardless of size. That the county has some impact in changing.
I agree with that. I think if we're going to talk food security, then there has to be people that want to farm the land and find security in farming it and are producing consistently where we can actually count on that and aren't sitting here wondering if they have another season or 3 seasons left in the tank. So I think that's intertwined in all of this. Pro ag development.
Do we want to communicate something coming out of this meeting, or do we want to talk more about that in our December meeting? There seems like there's a lot of ideas, or does somebody want to try to combine everything into a statement?
I think we want to improve the economic viability of farming in our community, and that means farmers getting having the resources and infrastructure to make a living. And that's something that we need to support and encourage, because it doesn't matter if you have designated farmland if people can't afford to farm it. So I think maybe making a general statement like what Justin said.
I agree. I think the word I was thinking of when we thought about swapping rights is also just restraining the financial viability of developing ag land. I don't know exactly how you do that, but I think it's tilting the scale to where you look at a piece of land and it says, oh, this is equally viable and valuable to be in ag production versus whatever development desire there is there. That's a different conversation because I know we talked about transferring of ag zoning, but I also, it's not a thing, but I just thought about what would it look like to put restraints of development existing ag land. Certain percentages have to stay viably commercial or can be developed versus stay in ag, so that someone looks at 80 acres and it's like, oh, I only really have 40 usable acres to build what I want to build versus I get to take over the whole thing. Just changing the return on investment, because money is always going to go where money is to be made. And so people who see return on investment in the county will take advantage of that 10 times out of 10.
So I'm going back to what Diane said, and Justin, does somebody want to come up with a statement and a motion?
Ruud Vandersholm again. For this last suggestion we want to give the council, I'm feeling like we're not under the gun. We don't have to finish this tonight. And this is not I mean, we could do a very generic, like, please hug a farmer, but we probably would like something with a little bit more substance. So maybe let's let our brains stew on a little bit and then come back to it in December.
All right, I'm seeing lots of nodding heads. Do we want to communicate anything about the rural lands that were identified in this study that are not currently designated as ag?
Ruud van der Salm again. I think we'd all love to see more ag land designated, but as we know from Christine, that's not really in the cards right now. So then we go back to what can the county do that becomes an option in the future.
This is Chris Cook, and I strongly doubt that it's in the cards, but that's not my decision to make. Just wanted to make that really clear. That's a county council decision.
I will say I'd be very interested about designating land that has water rights. If I had one thing of all of the criteria I was looking at, I would say if it has a water right, or if the owner wants it to be designated, bring it on in.
Can we call on an audience member?
So I'm David Morgan again. My family owns and manages 1,700 acres north of Ridgefield. It's in forestry because that was the only option for us. It's about half forestry and ag, but the only option we had was forestry at that time. I think an agroforestry designation would be very helpful in this discussion, where you're saying it has multiple land uses. And I think that's really important because in my forestry ground, I can grow mushrooms and truffles and ferns. That's all food. Forestry is also a piece you can run cows underneath. So that's, again, agroforestry. And all of those items I think are really important to this discussion. My land is X'd out of that study because it's in forestry. So all of the rural resource lands come under this designation and question because the pressures are all the same on all of it. And then the other thing that I've been sitting here trying to state, and I spent my life trying to figure this out, is that what we're really arguing or trying to quantify is the the value question of open ground and open space for future generations to come and farm or come and do something with. In northern Vermont, there's a ton of work that has been done to just pull a conservation easement on a piece of property so somebody can come and farm that later. And so it's nothing but the development rights go away and people can come back and farm it. And there's a thriving agricultural environment there in 40 below 10 weeks of growing season and cheese caves. And friends of mine are managing hay ground for the cheese caves, and they're specifying the grass that goes into the cows, that goes into the super high value cheese. And that value question, I think, is critical, as well as reducing the pathway to local food. So if you had a USDA facility here that you could process cows and get end user prices on beef or whatever those other options are, I think that's another piece here. So I applaud all of the discussion here, and I'm really excited to hear it. So thank you very much.
I want to go back. I think the agroforest designation is a state decision, correct? And the state decided that there can't be an agroforest designation, accurate?
That's correct.
Right. So it doesn't really sit with
Forest was designated in the
Thank you. I just want to make that clarification for the commission.
first GMA comp plan. That was one of the many things that was appealed. And the state said, no, you've got to choose agriculture or forestry.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. All right, I'm going to move us along because we have 13 minutes. Oh, Zora has a question or comment.
I'm going to move and we can shut this down, but I feel like we should make a super general statement about supporting agriculture economically, or you said it very eloquently before. We don't have to make it super specific, but just something. If we're making, like, we have 2 bullet points right now, I feel like a third about supporting agriculture would make it a nice 3.
State it.
We encourage the county council to explore options for supporting local agriculture economically. That was terrible.
Diane looks like she might want to help.
I would really love that.
I'm going to suggest that we wait until we have some specific things that we can recommend and have a further conversation, because I have a lot of ideas going on in my head, and I think it would be better for us to have something specific instead of something general. That's my opinion.
Mo, I would just like to talk a little, just to clarify what the timeline or what the rush or what's happening in terms of decision making at the council level. The November 30th deadline is for comments on the draft environmental impact statement on the 3 options that are being considered right now for the comp plan update. In January, and Oliver, correct me if I'm not right here, the council will be making a decision on our preferred alternative for land use decisions. So that would be whatever growth boundary expansions, anything related to ag, and we could have the ability to pick and choose from anything that's been studied in the draft environmental impact statement. So that's an important decision. And I think that whatever recommendations you want to make, you want to be sure that we see what those are before we're making a decision on the preferred alternative. And then if I could just make a suggestion, I feel like you're all being way too timid and that you can tell us, you can tell the council and make whatever recommendations you think are important from your perspective. So I would just encourage you not to feel shy about that.
I'm going to add just a quick clarifying thing to what I think you were kind of getting at. I think, so counties, cities, states, they like to tout that they're business friendly, right? I think what we're kind of like aiming at is that Clark County become ag enterprise friendly economically.
Mo, this is Bart. Being staff for this commission and the farthest thing from an ag expert, but I want to support the commission. We have another meeting in approximately a month. One of the things that we're probably not going to get to tonight that we had hoped maybe would be a discussion of some committees to work on side projects. I am more than willing, if there's three members here that want to form a committee to work on draft recommendations between now and the next meeting so that we could have choices for people versus spend another whole meeting trying to wordsmith. I don't know if that's a good idea. I'm throwing it out there because I feel like it's our job as staff to support this process.
Love it. Would folks want to work on that between now and the next meeting?
I would like 3 people. It's most manageable.
I see Holly. I see Diane. Matthew? Anybody else want to fight them for it?
We can do 4. Okay.
Justin, Diane, Holly, Matthew. Is that okay?
All right.
Thank you.
So you'll get separate communication from me, and what we can get from the rest of the commission is one-way communication so that we don't create a serial public meeting and get over our skis with that. But we can get one-way communication to that group, and then that group can synthesize and come with ideas to choose from next meeting.
Bart.
You're welcome.
So our homework is to submit comments to Bart, who will then
CC Lauren and Lauren
Sounds
and I, and then we'll synthesize them, and then we'll convene the committee as much as necessary in the next month.
Yep. That's great.
Because that seems like that's the priority right now.
Yep. Love it. Okay, so is there anything else we want on this topic? I feel like what's happening is we're moving everything else to next month. We have 2 things we're communicating, and then everything else is getting pushed to next month. And we have a subcommittee working on it. Yay, subcommittee. Any other discussion? Otherwise, I'm going to move us along really quickly.
I guess my question would be, is it important that we communicate those 2 things prior to getting our other things well ironed? Maybe a counselor would be able to nod yes or no.
I think we should.
Okay.
We voted on it. Let's do it.
Okay.
We have survey results here. I'm going to take 2 minutes on this, y'all. If you didn't take the survey, you can still take the survey, right, Lauren? Yeah. If you didn't take it, feel free to. Our goal with this was just to understand, once we get through this ag land studies, what we want to be working on as a commission. Obviously, we're going to be working on how to designate ag land, right? So we'll make sure that that's on here. But I would encourage you to look through this if you haven't yet, and see what we want to be working on in those subcommittees. And I think we're aiming for a January meeting on subcommittees, but maybe we can even start to talk about it next month as well. Anybody have questions or thoughts on that? Otherwise, I'm going to move us to the good of the order. Topics for future meetings from commission members. Any other comments or announcements? I like to give things lots of time. Okay. There's nothing else. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Justin Berger, motion to adjourn.
Diane Dempster, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Let's get out of here. Thanks, y'all.